Y64LAN, V64LAN. You guys gotta stop. You guys gotta stop. Thank you.
What are you doing?
You gotta stop for pedestrians, buddy. Pay attention. Pay attention.
Bring in the bomb squad. I'm gonna get mine. Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. Don't tell me how you all been down. When you smile in my face and you play me like a clown, just a fool, bitch. So just step back. I'm mad dab when I come to trap. I thought you was my piece, but you played me out. Now I'm mad as hell and I'm full of doubt. Who you wanna roll with? Who you wanna roll with? Lefty. Let's go. Who you wanna roll with? Who you wanna roll with? Lefty. Let's go. Back on the scene, it's time to get mean. I'm a lean, mean revolution machine. What people say, they stay this way, but today is as good as any day. Y'all feel slightly dissed, let's resist. Raise your hand and pump like this. Promises all the time. Don't cross the line, cause you know it's mine. Who you wanna roll with? Who you wanna roll with? Lefty. Let's go. Who you wanna roll with? Who you wanna roll with? Lefty. Let's go.
Howdy, y'all.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Was that the actual ending of the song? Sounded like he just came off.
I think so.
I got an echo too, and I sound a little nasally. Can you do anything about that?
Would you like a vocoder?
Yeah. You know they have that. What do you call it? The when you sing. What's that called?
Karaoke?
Voice adjusted singing. Come on, I'm already
Auto
crapping.
tune.
Auto tune. Yeah. If they had like auto tune for your voice, it'd be pretty cool. I'd rather
They do.
I want to sound like Sam Elliott. Okay, and then boom.
We can make that happen, Jim.
There's a Debbie Wimberly. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Well, we only let the people we really like back.
No,
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Yes, we love our Debbie.
Yes, we do.
Here, you want to sit down? Okay.
So, is anybody going to talk about the elephant in the room? The
No.
schedule through?
No.
Actually, Debbie, we have Debbie as a
No.
guest. So Debbie's going to tell us about what she's been doing.
Okay.
And she does a newsletter.
Yep.
Debbie's been around for a while. So Debbie, the floor is yours.
Put that out.
Great. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here and to share with everybody kind of what's going on in the world with cannabis and education. We create the Effective Cannabis newsletter, which is today reached its 34th country, which is truly amazing. And it's, gauged and written for the patient, but also for the practitioner that's just learning about cannabis and not very well knowledgeable. We pair and partner with all the experts in the industry. So you might hear from Bonnie Goldstein. You might hear from somebody like Sue. We're having a podcast tomorrow with Heather from CNN Network and Ken talking about the new legislation that's coming through now and trying to figure out how to guide patients since it's not really focusing on patients and what patients need. So we have podcasts, interviews that we do, talking with individuals learning about cancer and new research. So it's a great tool. And then I'm creating some new training to teach people how to engage with their endocannabinoid system and just learn how to engage with it in a more simple term than what we've got today.
So what's new lately besides this pending proposal or actual order that was signed?
What, and legal?
Yeah.
Yeah. The only other thing that I've seen is there's a new bill that's on the floor. It's a bipartisan bill that is trying to make it where states can opt out of the federal laws for the hemp bill and come up with their own hemp policy. We will be discussing that a little bit more in our interview conversation that we're having and understanding what that means and if that's even going to come to fruition. Who knows?
Yeah. How are things in Arizona right now?
It's more of a recreational state than it is a patient driven service. So trying to find products that I personally need for my health, which is a combination of a multiple of cannabinoids, is almost impossible, which I think is happening in most states that have gone recreational or adult use. And I think it's really important that we keep bringing this to the front. And that's why these conversations have to happen so that we can show that patients that are being left behind and don't have access to the proper cannabinoid therapies and the products that they need, we're not addressing serious health issues that a lot of people live with. It could be something as simple as stress that you're trying to manage, or it could be something as complicated as a TBI or chronic lung conditions, which is what I treat. So, it's just understanding that we don't want to leave anyone behind or out.
So, Debbie, I don't think I ever asked you this before, but, I know your medical history, and I think you know a little bit of mine also. But when you started using cannabis for your own treatment, what kind of guidance did you have, if any, or did you do it yourself?
Well, this is really interesting. I was had no guidance from anyone, and I was abandoned by my doctors during the opioid crisis. So they, at 240 milligrams a day of OxyContin, they said, "Oh, we can't help you anymore because of a policy change, and I don't know who's going to help you. Go find help." Well, that's kind of hilarious when you think about it now. And I was not happy at the moment. But because of that, I decided to try cannabis and to see what it could do. Because when I worked in oncology back in the late 70s, I worked with two amazing doctors that talked about using what we called marijuana back then to control pain and to provide sleep. We didn't even know there was an endocannabinoid system back then. So, we were not even working with the full tech knowledge that we have today. And of course, there was nobody at MD Anderson that was going to ever let us do that. So, we had patients that were doing it under the table and then telling us a little bit about what was going on. But fast forward, knowing where we were with the policies, there really wasn't anything that we could do. And now when I look at the cancer field, I see that should be the number one field. I think all fields should be involved, but I think the cancer field should be the number one field standing up and saying we need to do something about this because we do know the benefits of it for cancer today.
Yes,
Can I
we
ask
do.
you a question?
Sure.
Because I don't know. Does Arizona have home grow? Is that legal in Arizona?
We do have home grow, but the laws around it are so strict. Like it has to be in a locked closet. It has to be so where nobody can see it, so nobody can get to it, and you can only grow 6 plants.
Oh, so it's like New Jersey.
So
Yep.
it's
Well, no,
As
we're
long
not
as it's
even
in the closet and no one knows, it's legal.
We're not even in the closet. We're not allowed in the closet.
So is it 6 plants per patient?
6 plants per household.
Per house. Okay. When I lived in New York, I was in New York during the whole system change, and they automatically granted home grow, and home grow was at that time was 7 plants per patient, and there could be 7 patients living in one house, which would have given them 49 plants, which everybody was pretty happy with that until the past couple of years, where all this other stuff started coming up, and kind of like, the more we know, the less we know, because everybody started taking little back steps instead of keep going forward. you know, within the movement, I want to say. I don't even want to say within the industry, because the industry is a whole different animal. Is that what you're finding in Arizona also?
Definitely what I'm finding in Arizona, but I also, one of the things I left out there is that they've made the law really difficult here, that if you're very close to a dispensary, there's really no reason for you to grow.
Yeah.
And so, like where I'm at, just about everywhere you turn the corner, there's a dispensary. We have more
Yeah.
dispensaries than anything else. So
Yeah.
you have to live really far out to be able to grow. So, you know, it just is something I've just kind of just ignored and not paid any attention to, because trying to figure out how to grow in Arizona is not something that's going to be simple. I can't put a grow room in my house, and, you know, don't want anybody reporting me because I have a plant growing in my backyard if they happen to see it. So it's just like, it's more complication than it's worth for me. And it makes it really difficult for patients, because I think when patients can grow their own medicine, they can grow exactly what they need and meet
Yeah.
their needs.
So back to when you started using cannabis, how were you able to figure out what you needed? Was it just like, you know, trial by error, like just keep trying until you found what you
It
needed?
definitely was. I was extremely ill when I started. I had a 24-hour caregiver and was in a wheelchair and on oxygen 24 hours a day. I wasn't living life, so I was studying from my bed. And so I was signing up for any virtual class that I could take to understand this. Being medically trained, I wanted to understand how this was going to work for me. And the first time I walked into a dispensary, I met with a young man, knew nothing about my health. I didn't walk in, I rolled in a wheelchair, and he had no idea what pharmaceuticals I was on. And next thing I know, I'm walking out with $500 worth of product, none of them smokable or no flower, because of my lung health, and didn't know whether any of that would work, and it didn't. And so then I started turning my attention to documenting everything that I was doing and keeping track. And I mean, like, serious notes of everything that I did, how soon it impacted me, if I felt anything, because I was trying to come off of 240 milligrams of OxyContin. So
Yeah.
I was in the middle of going through withdrawals. And in January, that was in December, and in January, I was in the hospital fighting for my life, couldn't breathe for myself, and wasn't aware of what was going on. And when I came to, I said, I'll do everything in my power to make sure that no one else ever finds himself here.
Yeah, that's rough stuff.
Yeah, man.
So you kind of concocted your own blend.
I still do to this day. Yeah.
Okay. Because I know I do that.
Right. Yeah, I have to take a little bit of CBD, a little bit of CBG, a little bit of THC, and some acidics that I take in the form of gummies or tinctures. But yeah, I'm a flower girl, and I do flower vape, which is something I never thought I would do, having lung issues. But once you find a good flower vape and understand how a flower vape works, that's exactly what my lungs needed. And all the nodules that were in my lungs from the MAC lung disease are gone now. The only thing I have are scars, just showing me and reminding me that they were there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Congratulations.
You know, I wish I could smoke. I mean, I did for, you know, years, but I can't, because I did drop a lung once, and I don't ever want to have to do that again. Having a chest tube for 10 days is, it's an experience. I'm sure you could relate.
I can relate, because I was submitted for a lung transplant. I only used 30% of my lungs. Yeah.
Yeah. And then how long did they keep you on the transplant list? Was it 6 months?
Oh, I never made it. And
Oh,
I
you
didn't
didn't?
make it on the transplant list because of opioids that they were providing me with.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Because they want success stories.
Right.
And if they're not going to think it's going to be a good success story, you're not going to make it on the list.
How easy was it for you to come off of the opioids? Your own experience using cannabis?
That is a nightmare I don't wish on anybody, to be very honest. I worked in detox when I worked in the hospital and at the VA. And I always thought I didn't quite understand it. And once you go through it yourself, you fully understand it. And
Yeah.
I can tell you, forcing someone to detox in a week off of anything
Mhm.
and not giving them tools and support that they need through that is not a healthy way. And that's why we have so many relapses. I think that understanding how to detox in a kind and peaceful way is the most that we could do for any individual. It took me quite a while after I came out of the hospital, and because they dropped me for 240 milligrams a day to 180. That's a lot in one jump with no support.
Oh my God.
So from the time I got out of the hospital until June, they kept forcing me to do fast tapers. And I finally said at the end of June, I won't do this anymore. You're killing me. You're not giving me time to recover at all from one transition to the other. And my body is screaming at me. I'm not in a healthy place because I had MAC lung disease, COPD, living in a chronic pain of 10 from complex regional pain syndrome, which is the suicide disease. And I was trying to avoid going there. And having a 24-hour caregiver and watching my family around me and not being able to be a part of anything that was going on, it's like, this is inhumane. This is wrong. And I put my foot down. And so I gradually then tapered off, and I allowed myself to recover after one taper and adjust my system and engage with my ECS in a way that brought me some peace and recover. And then I would start another taper down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's rough. It's rough stuff. I mean, I had to do the same thing. I've been in recovery for almost 12 years now. And yeah, it wasn't easy. It took me, time-wise, it took me a good, I would say 8 months, I think, before I started to feel like a human being again.
Yeah, I was going to ask Kathy, no, I'm sorry, Debbie, how long, past June, how long did it take till you were fully off of them and only on cannabis?
It took me a good another 2 years because I made the decision that I was not going to spend my summers detoxing. When you're detoxing year round, you don't enjoy anything in life. You can't do anything. And it's like, okay, we're going to do this on my grounds. And so we did. And I remember meeting with a clinic that we had here in Arizona at the time, which was a cannabis clinic to help people transition off of opioids. And so I met with them, and they said, there's no way you'll be able to do this on your own, because I've been doing it all by myself pretty much. The only advice I had was somebody, giving me a cut down on OxyContin. I was figuring out what to do with cannabis. And they said, you'll never be able to do this when it comes to the last cut downs because your body just can't handle it. You'll have to have support. And so give us $500, but we want to learn everything that you've learned. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. And I have to say, the last cut down wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. None of them are easy, but the last cut down showed me what my body had been through and where I had come. So I was able to begin to see the improvements that I was making within my health by eliminating 25 prescriptions with one natural plant.
Yeah. Wow. So
you kept notes through the whole thing? I'm sorry.
yeah, Jim. No, go.
No, you kept copious notes all through that? Did you?
Yes, I did.
So, I guess the next question would be obvious. Are you ever going to chronicle that so it can be read from beginning to end? Because it's a pretty freaking valuable story you're telling.
I do. I have chronicled some of it. If I've written a couple of articles about it. My first article I wrote about is what I've learned in 7 years of studying cannabis and chronic pain. And then the second one I wrote was around my lung health and how I have eliminated 25 pharmaceuticals and what cannabinoids I used, terpenes I used. It's a wealth of information for sure.
Yeah, I don't have any reference point for addiction of that sort, although I hear a lot of stories, but yours is like about as extreme. And in all the stories I hear, that's right up there. And from being advised without really any understanding of what you understand, and having to break away from that and then have that confidence to do what you did, that's just a story that could help so many people, and it's I'm glad if you can get any of that into print in a form that you'd be able. I don't know about writing, if it would take somebody else that would help or be able to do it, because I've seen some pretty fine books written like that, but please do what it takes. It's awesome. I mean, I would love to read that right now, because it makes sense, but the stepping it down,
it's really learning your system and being engaged with it and learning to sit with your body and listen to what it's telling you.
And the recovery time in between. See, I never thought in terms like that when I'm hearing other people go through what they talk about, but there's never really any focal point about that. And for you to be under clinical care where they don't do that, that borders on frightening. And it explains the relapses, like you said.
And the other thing too, going from 24-hour care to having to be, evaluated for a lung transplant, to now you're not in a wheelchair.
Not in a wheelchair anymore, no.
You don't have 24-hour care.
No.
And your lungs are clear of nodules. And now you're not existing, you're actually living. And all that documented step by step. What an incredible piece of information. What an incredible research review.
When we don't, if I had to document it, I wouldn't have learned to take the steps that I did. Because what I can tell you is that, I didn't start cannabis for anything other than to control pain. And when you've lived in a pain level of 10 for over 2 decades, when you start seeing something to relieve that, that's like a joy I can't even begin to explain. When you go from a 10 to a 7, from a 7 to a 3, to a 3 to 0, and you're not on any pharmaceutical, you're using a natural plant, that's an internal joy that becomes unexplainable.
Yeah.
But on top of that, in the middle of that, I started realizing I was not taking my breathing meds. I was forgetting to take them. And that's where those 25 pharmaceuticals came in that were lining my countertop. And that was the only thing that was keeping me alive and out of the hospital, or in the hospital most of the times, because I was in and out of the hospital all the time with exacerbations. And so when I started finally forgetting to take my medicine, I started beating myself up. And I would get mad at myself. It's like, I can't do this. This is not good for me. I'm told I'm supposed to take this medicine. That's the medical part of me being trained and to follow the system. And so then one day I just stopped in my tracks and I said, okay, I've done this for over 2 months now. My body's telling me something. I need to listen to it. And so I started gradually cutting them off one by one and found that I could eliminate all of them but one, which is like
incredible.
And it is incredible. And I'm still not healthy. I would love to say that I'm healthy. I still only use 30% of my lungs, but I'll take this life I have right here, right now, over anything I lived for 3 decades. And 100%. I'm so thankful that I didn't have a lung transplant because I know what that was like. The whole process of getting approved and all the things that you'd have to go through and all the pharmaceuticals you'd have to live on for the rest of your life. I'm so thankful that I was denied. So I sit here today thankful for every piece of this journey. If my doctors hadn't abandoned me, I would not know this. I would still not even be there. In that same trap that I was in of handing the keys of my health over to someone else. It's time we change this conversation.
Yeah, I've heard.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said, I know we've all heard a lot of stories about addiction. I mean, Lefty's got quite the story of going through it, although more abruptly and kind of plowing straight through it. But having the ability to do that without doing damage and getting where he did. But everybody else, I've never heard anybody say, "Yeah, I got notes, copious notes from beginning to end." I've never heard anybody say, "You want to see my notes?" or "Let me refer to my notes." When was it? I don't know. Is it, how long? It was about 3 months. No, I mean, you have, well, it went from October, you have it. And that's what makes it, to some people who just want to not believe it can happen. Because if you grow up on, with the just say no to drugs and you be a good person and do all that, this won't make sense. Because it almost seems impossible. But you got notes, and that's amazing. But that's you're being a professional, a clinician, nurse. I don't know what would be the right way to say it, but that you might be more predisposed to that than other people, because that would help you when you were helping somebody if they have notes. So I don't know, but that's exciting.
I think also, when you are in that space and you have been so ill for so long, it's not like I just got ill for a few months. I had been ill for so long and couldn't be participating in much of my life for so long. And so when I got to the place that I'm going to take charge of my health myself, it's like, what do I need to do that? What are the tools that I need to make that happen? It wasn't like I just said, oh, I'm going to get off opioids and then I'll just continue to do what the doctor said. I made a decision the day they left me standing on the curb that I'm going to beat this, and I am not going to let you rule how this goes. And so, it's making a decision for myself, because I've given them almost 3 decades to do this, and they couldn't do it. And I took what was the impossible and made it possible. And the only way you can do that is by documenting what you're doing, because if anybody uses cannabis or if they're sick, they know this. The first time you use cannabis, you use it, and you don't realize when it does something for you. You might realize it at some point, but like the first time I realized my pain wasn't as intense as it was before I took cannabis. It's like, oh, when did that happen? When did that kick in? I realize I'm not in as much pain, but when did that happen? And so that's when all that note taking started coming in. It's like, I want to know when that happened so that I know the next time what I need to do, because the beauty of cannabis and using it as medicine is you get to decide when you want to use it. If you're using opioids or any pharmaceutical, they tell you, you can take this every 12 hours, you can take this 2 times a day, whatever it is. And I can tell you, I had to come with terms of being an addict, because I had always been told, you're not an addict, you use pharmaceuticals and your body's just dependent upon
Managing your pain. Yeah.
And you don't really notice. It sounded like you were saying something that knocked me out first time I felt it. I mean, in a good way. I mean, knocked me out. But that I could never catch the pain leaving. If I'd have a shot, the pain relief would come. Even if I had to take ibuprofen for a headache, I'm aware of the pain going away. But when I smoked cannabis, especially when it was pretty serious pain, it'd almost be gone, and I didn't feel it going away. It's like a magic trick.
It is.
It really is.
I mean, you
I'm
should
the same
feel
way.
it going away. I mean, in other words, if somebody had my arm twisted and it's about to break and they let go, I'm going to feel it going away. But I couldn't catch it. It was like a little kid trying to catch Santa Claus, and I never could,
I totally agree, because I can remember sitting in my chase and, sitting down, being in a pain of 10, and let's say it could have been more than 10. I can only use the number of 10, and thinking, I just can't get through this day. And then at some point in that evening, I was like, oh, crap.
Yeah, and you're 10.
I feel really good. Or I don't feel as much pain.
Well,
That happens all the time to me.
But the 10 you have isn't everybody's 10. I mean, you have a 10 that on my scale might be 25 or something. You know, and any time in the hospital, somebody, what's your pain level today? Well, I know what I got to say if I want to have an opiate, and I'll say that, you know, because I was in a lot of pain from an accident. But not like what you're talking about. That's why it kind of freaks me out a little bit. But it was impossible. It's impossible to explain to somebody without my background that you do have to be able to convey to other people in the hospital what you're talking about, you know. And I never found I was able to do that. I mean, or in any setting, you know, the best I ever got was to say that I thought Zofran was the second best antiemetic, and I appreciate them giving that to me, which of course begs the question. And then I'd tell them, and I kid you not, I don't know, think you were there or not, because somebody else was there. But there was a doctor, my doctor, and he had like 3 little ducklings, or okay, 3. What are they, interns? They follow him around and
Yeah.
take notes and stuff, and almost get ready for questions. Yeah, it was. I would get sick from the opiates, I think it was, and it would come on fast.
Yeah.
And just talking about it, for the first time in my life, I vomited without any audibles. I can't vomit quietly. I don't know. I just can't. It's almost impossible. Maybe it's the pain and I'm a wuss. I don't know. But that one was like when he said, so how does the Zofran working for you? It was like right on cue. And I let a gusher out and then looked up and said, not so good. And it was, and you know, you could see the look on the note takers, like, how do you put that into a note, you know? But you have a way of passing this on to other people that need to understand this. And I just think as some people who would understand it, that who are in a position to, in the field of healthcare anywhere, you know, this could be like a good bridge the gap from somebody with your credentials, your background, telling the story like I just heard it. You know, it should open up other people's minds a little bit who need to know about this.
I'm here. If you want to talk to me, come and get me, because this is something I would love to do. I think that I've met with many pain clinics. I've been in pain clinics, and they're not so open to this conversation, as you all probably know, standing here. And this is a conversation we need to be having. There are things that we can do to improve people's quality of daily living. And that should be everyone's goal. Mm-hmm. Today's what we have. We don't have yesterday, it's gone. We don't have tomorrow. But the quality of life you have today is important, and it matters. And, you know, I don't care what your profession is. You should want to see that for every single person. I do.
100%. See, you need to sit in front of Congress and the House. You need to, I'm dead serious. You need to tell your story. You need to get it to everybody.
Well, I try. That's why we do the newsletter. That's why I do the Effective Cannabis Conversations, to share this. And no, I probably don't tell my story often enough. I focus on other people's stories to bring them forward. I'm always told I'm just one person.
But you're an inspiration.
It doesn't work that way for someone else. And I don't agree with that at all. That's why I try to focus on sharing other people's stories. But I find it interesting. I have a new pulmonologist, and I went to see her. I've seen her twice now. And knowing my lung history and everything that I've been through, you would think they would be interested in knowing what I use. I don't openly tell them that I use cannabis, because that becomes a whole big battle. And especially when we're talking about lungs. And so this time I decided to leave that piece of the conversation out. And so she looks at me and she says, I just think it's pretty amazing that you're not on all these pharmaceuticals that most people are on. And I said, I've worked really hard to get where I am. I've worked really hard to do this. You would think she would ask me, well, what did you do? Nope.
She didn't answer.
Never asked that question. And I'm waiting for that, because then I'm going to explain what I've done, and I'm going to hand them an article or the Effective Cannabis newsletter and say, read this on lung health, because we have a whole issue that's just devoted to lung health and the benefits of cannabinoid therapies.
And never asked. I mean, that I can't wrap my head around that.
Me either. I
just,
walk out
Yeah.
every time thinking, why didn't you ask?
Yeah.
You
I
know
would have
me.
said, what are you doing? What did you
and
do?
the
Right?
exact opposite of that happened, and it's what turned me into an advocate was in the short story is having a wife with MS and finding out in 1990, late 1990, that this worked in a salad dressing for her. And then being at a rehab where it made the difference in her staying, or she would have got kicked out without telling anybody. And when they asked me what you weren't asked, what did you do? Or what, and I had to say, I don't know, must have been you guys. Thanks. And that freaking killed me. I mean, that turned me around. But then I'm hearing it like in a different form. Now, when you can ask that question, when it's really not the big, scary thing it was even 30 years ago. Wow.
You know what I find that's really it's really disappointing to me and for me, being in the healthcare industry for so long, is that just as Debbie is describing, no one ever asks you why or what are you doing, I was diagnosed with hepatitis C, and I've told you guys this a million times already, but that over 30 years ago, and I haven't taken any medication for it, and I'm still standing, and I'm fine. And when I did go to see my hepatologist just recently, and that was only because my PCP, he asked me to. He said, just humor me, just check in with him, and I did. And again, and I knew what he was going to do. I said that to Mark, the doc I see, and I said, Mark, he's going to try and push those meds on me, and I'm not taking them. He said, that's okay. It's okay. Just check in. Just he's going to scan your liver. Let's see what it looks like, And I was like, all right, I'll do that. And I did. But the minute I walked in the door, he was like right on top of me again, and he was the same doc that treated me 30 years ago when nobody even knew what hepatitis C was. It was new. It was, the only reason why I got diagnosed was because I donated my own blood. Because I had surgery done. I had a broken neck, and I wanted my own blood. It was the post-AIDS generation of health. He never once asked me either. Just him. Just that one hepatologist never asked me, what are you doing? And he's a young guy. It's not like, he's like an old timer and doesn't believe in it or anything like that. And it just, I don't know, it just amazes me that question doesn't get asked, but it doesn't.
It doesn't. And I don't know if it's because they just like, okay, I don't have to do anything about it. Put that on the paper. It's taken care of. Or if they don't want to know the answer. That's what I want to know. Is it because you're just moving on that you don't have to deal with something? Or is it you don't want to know the answer?
Or is it they suspect the answer and don't want to leave? I mean, somewhere there's got to be, maybe not with that and a lung issue, but there's pain issues and so on. It's the same thing. Yet they should be quicker to want to know. And when they don't, I would throw into the mix because I'm always looking for cause and effect of things like that. And maybe it's, almost an instinct that I just don't really want to go down that road, because what if the answer has something to do with cannabis, because you hear about it and then you ask somebody, so maybe they don't want to ask like a lawyer making a mistake by saying anything and it turns the other, I don't know, because it makes no sense to me. I can't come up with anything better than that. I don't know.
It makes no sense. And it could be a time thing. Doctors don't have much time to spend with you today. So if they don't have time, I don't need to do that. That's time. I can get out of here quicker. I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's the conversation we need to be having.
That's only if they're hospital employees. If they are employed by the hospital, their time is limited. So that's why you see that happen. Now, my husband's a surgeon, and I think you know that already.
Right.
He does, and he has refused throughout the years to go on. He's on staff. He has privileges. He brings his patients to two big medical centers around here, but he will not go on staff. And I mean, he's close to retirement now, and I've said to him, so what are you going to do? Because you can't hang out all day and bother me. Yeah, I got things to do. But and I've said to him, go teach in the medical school. This stuff. You've been listening to me for years. He had to take the course in the beginning and blah, 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 and even just now, I was just explaining to him, this is what this topic of conversation that we're all going to be having really means. And the only benefit I see here, and I'm just going to say it now and then we can move on, is that I'll tell you who's going to benefit. It's the lawyers and the accountants.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have a federally sponsored pension plan from all of this because of that 280E, tax thing.
Right on the nose, right on the money.
So that's it, and that's this welcome to capitalism, right? I guess. I don't know.
Well, and we have a bigger issue that we haven't touched on here is about the patient that is using, or the individual, I don't care who you are, if you're using cannabis to deal with your stress, or you're dealing with anxiety, or you're dealing with a serious health issue. It's important. And so if you go into the hospital, that leaves. There is no acceptance in our hospitals today for the most part. And that has to change.
Yeah, and that's why we need to push Ryan's law for that.
Yes, absolutely. Because when I had to go into the hospital for a kidney stone, and immediately, because I have lung issues and they see my record, they want to start putting me back on all those pharmaceuticals, like Sue said. And I was like, no, I'm not taking this. But I could not get access to my medicine while I was in the hospital. Mm-hmm. So it was a very difficult time for me. And I got into a number of fights with my hospitalist because I wanted someone to just listen to me. And there was no one that wanted to listen to me about my medicine, my body, my health, what I had accomplished. So we have to do something. And as this stuff starts to move forward, we continue to need to have these conversations and not leave the patient behind.
And I think we need to be aggressive in having these conversations. I tell every one of my doctors, and I have quite a few, they all know that I medicate with cannabis. I make no bones about it. And, they look at my medical records and they see, I've had doctors come in numerous times and look at my chart and look over at me and look over at my chart and think I was the driver, for all the medical conditions I have. I don't take pain medication, and I never have. Because we have addiction in my family and I did not want to go there. So, cannabis is, and I have zero pain now because of it and can walk with a broken back, and Sue, she had a broken neck. Like, these are serious conditions and that we can live with.
I just wanted to share this with everybody. I just wanted to share this with everybody. This is just a little sidebar here. Americans for Safe Access, they're doing these monthly federal policy briefings, not monthly, I mean weekly, until this June 29th date comes up for, what's going to happen with Schedule 3. So if you go on AESA, you can sign up for they're free. It's free. And it's just a general overview for professionals who need to understand the timelines, risks, and where engagement actually matters. So I signed myself up for May 21st, and just to see what's being said and what's being talked about. And I like Americans for Safe Access. I think they're a pretty good organization. But anyway, that's all.
I think they're having a call tonight at 8 p.m.
They are.
Yeah,
there is one tonight.
8 p.m. Yeah. I think that they do.
Yeah, that's why I jumped myself on the next one.
Yeah, trying to get those out. I think that's important. The thing is we need to be working together as a collaborative, all of us. Yeah. I find the reason I started the newsletter is because so many people are doing their thing over here and somebody else is doing their thing over here. And so we're not coming together as one voice. And that's why we highlight so many different people and we highlight different experts, because we need to build a collaborative of voices that can move this forward, because I believe it's still believed to this day, it's the patients that are going to move this forward more than anybody else and make it happen and run correctly for what we need. And so, you know, it's building that platform where everybody has a voice, can use their voice and can share. And we do testimonials to back up the data. So we, you know, take and ask you 9 questions and create a beautiful blog, and then that answers, and we get the same data, but we're building a huge database of content off of that. And it's, you know, it's really important to understand that when we are not listening to the patient and we're not listening to the person that's struggling with their life, we're leaving so much off the table that needs to be discussed.
Especially where we're welcome to take part, because in New Jersey, patients don't really get to take part in the decisions that affect medical cannabis patients, that affect their lives. They're pretty much not really considered their welfare. It's coming from the wrong direction. And, you know, that I'm not going to be able to certainly go to the safe access thing tonight. I'd like to hear what they have to say, because they were here about a decade ago, or maybe, I don't know, 13 years ago, and in wherever they got the rooms here in the museum building there, you know, there's a meeting room. And man, what a great that bringing things together, you know. So yeah, kind of attacking from the same direction, different groups from different areas of the country is somewhat essential. And for the cannabis legalization part, cannabis consumers seem to be more like cats than dogs. I mean, if you lined them up for a race and shot off a gun, they'd all run in different directions, you know. And I actually
like that.
Yeah, I dealt with that on the Association of Reform Organizations thing, right when emails were good, you know. And so 2 people from each organization, and Ken and I were in that. And I noticed this, and I suggested, how about we have one thing going on each month for one part of the country's problems. We don't all pile in, but we all take half our efforts and we'll put it there. So we have like 12 times the effort of any one group. And that's when it was explained to me by a man named Steve Green. And I never, you know, he said that, and I liked it too. I thought, that's true. You know, it really is. I mean, it seemed to be more individualistic. We don't, we don't necessarily coordinate as well. And for a long time, it seemed like that was a definition of, not now, but Democrats and Republicans. Democrats were like the cats and Republicans were like the dogs, who would all gather in a pack and wait for a fucking cat to walk by, you know? And, but now, you know, I don't know what's going on. But I like it when the cannabis movement can do that, if there is a such thing. But it seems to happen few and far between in the advocacy community. There just doesn't seem to be a lot of respect for various ways to approach things at times. And maybe that's a little more in New Jersey than anywhere else, you know. But
I don't think so. I think that's pretty across the board. I talked to a lot of people.
Debbie, and yeah.
And
well,
it's global. You know, if you think the U.S. is the only one that's struggling here, we're not.
The thing about New Jersey is, I hear what you're saying, and I believe that's true. But I might say I think everybody else caught up with New Jersey, because we've been there longer. It's like everybody. I feel like we've already corrupted Delaware. You know, we were the first state to not have home grow out of 14 states, you know, and all of a sudden the Delaware, no home grow, and even Pennsylvania, it's the states near it. We infected them. It's like we gave them somebody to point to. Look, they don't have it. We were first.
But New
No,
York
it's
has
really
it.
funny. It's really funny that you said that because you know, as I mentioned before, when I was living in New York, you know, it was 7 plants per patient, and there
Yeah.
could be 7 patients living in the house. New York, really nobody bothers you in New York, you know, and I say that because I lived there for 20 years.
You know,
I only moved back here for 2 years. When I moved back, I forgot that there was no home grow here, you know,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, duh. But what happened was because of I just think this on my own is this setback, this Jersey setback with the no home grow and the no home grow and the no home grow. Well, eventually what happened in New York since I left is that 7 plants per
house.
house.
Yeah.
No more 7 plants per patient.
One more thing
I
about
was like, damn. Well, I'm glad I wasn't there to see that happen, you know?
we legalized medical cannabis before New York,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden adults can grow there before us.
Mhm.
And that prompted me to say, dividing lines between New York and New Jersey, not at the river, but up at the state line up, you know. And it didn't take me long at all to go onto Google Maps and find the best example of the state line cutting right through a house. And now you can look and see there was a bedroom that was in New York.
Yeah.
In a garage.
So you
I think
can,
it was a bedroom in a garage, and then the
Mhm.
living room was in New Jersey. Now, I'm sure there's some other way that they determine that in a court of law. But to me, that'd be across the state line. So what if you were outside the house, behind your house? And, you know, I mean,
You did a gym.
and we got ours passed forward. You know, we were the novelty in the Northeast when it happened a little bit. And so, you know, we're still out in the dark here, and I don't know. Don't sound like I wouldn't really live anywhere else. I can say that, but it's mostly because I can't live anywhere else. I couldn't move somewhere else. I don't have the means to do it. But Arizona sounds like, at least, you know, difficult as it might be amongst other states where you can grow at least 6 plants of your own, but you know, there has to be in a closet. That's New Jersey's MO right there. Has to be in a closet with an approved lock on it. The door can't be painted green, or kids might figure it out. You know, they go. Yeah,
That's
You eat
totally how it's going to go. You know
That's-
that.
yeah.
Scutari visited out there. That's why.
I mean, and I don't want to. I almost don't want to digress too far into the fun part of bashing New Jersey from what I heard tonight, though. I mean, it's I'm feeling a little more, you know, the bomb's kicking, and I take out a little edible fingerful. It's just when it kicks in pretty good. But I'm still feeling the story that you told. It's almost like there's something else going on. Damn it, I can't quite release myself into the joviality that follows a good meeting. Damn it. You know, it's like I feel like I've learned something beyond what I already knew that you said and all, but it's the idea that you came to this epiphany, but you can't really exactly. Was there something that kicked it in finally to do that 90-degree turn that you did with all authority after 3 decades? You know, I got hurt like less than half of that ago. Never felt, well, if I felt the pain you were feeling, I knew it was getting better. And that made me feel good, but a little bit guilty for people who it wouldn't get better. But I clearly remember I wouldn't last that long. I don't know how you kept your sanity.
I lived on the edge a lot, and suicide entered my mind often. I can remember sitting down with my medical doctor at the pain clinic and asking them to cut my leg off.
Oh,
Just take my leg away. And they said, unfortunately, because your crux is controlled by your brain, it won't take the pain away.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like this. Your endocannabinoid system is designed to react when you have pain, and it's supposed to send endocannabinoids to address it in that your pain receptor. And when my incident to my foot happened, it short-circuited that nerve. And so it was just a constant, like I was being electrocuted. That's the best way I know how to describe it. And the reason I can say that, I've been electrocuted as a kid. So I know what that feels like. But it was constant electrocution. And so you want it to stop. And so I just was looking for anything that would take it off. We talked about assisted death, assisted suicide, whatever you want to call it, because that is not a life we want anyone living. But the part of me that struggled the most about not following through was my family. And we have had 2 suicides in our family, and I know what it does.
Yeah.
And I know the depth of the loss and the hurt and the feel that comes from that. And it's like, I cannot add to that anymore. And so I kept fighting. And now I know that the reason I did that is so I could be here on this mission to make sure that I could help someone else in this space.
You know,
you have a real purpose.
In New Jersey, we have opiate use disorder as an indication to be allowed into the medical cannabis program so that you can use cannabis, whether it's weaning yourself off or staying in your good state, whatever. But we have a statewide program, Reach New Jersey, and a hotline and all that. And if you call the hotline, no matter how, they don't tell you that you can enter the medical cannabis program in New Jersey. So Reach New Jersey doesn't have that in their outreach. In the state that really allowed everything in drips and drabs, making sure they controlled every little indication coming in, they did put that in there. And I thought, this is awesome. And I'm really angry about that.
Is it because they're federally funded? Because that would
Reach talks bad about cannabis. They say it's addictive, and all this other all the Kevin Sabet stuff is on Reach.
Yeah,
so are they federally funded?
I don't think so. They're state funded. Yeah, the thing is, I was actually gonna call and see if I know I could have made that call, but I can't be duplicitous about this even. I mean, I couldn't do it. And I can do about anything. I've gone beyond more than a couple of times, and that I couldn't do. I mean, I picked it up to do it, and I just couldn't do it. But it was almost like that. Mikey will try it. He'll try it, a commercial.
Mikey,
yeah,
give
right.
it to Mikey.
Mikey likes it.
I think at one time it was like Lefty will make the call. He'll call anybody, And I think we did, but it wasn't. You weren't saying, "Hi, I'm an addict" or anything like that. But you did make the call, I think, asking about it. Unless I'm just projecting that that's something you would expect you to do, and maybe I don't know if I'm remembering that because you make some calls.
I think for every methadone clinic there should be a cannabis clinic right next to it.
Yeah, and the
unfortunately, the methadone clinics have kind of gone away because of pain management. So pain management docs,
they give it to you now.
Yeah, they prescribe methadone, and I lost my daughter-in-law, and she was addicted to opioids, and she of course, I used to make her big batches of butter and what have you, but she just couldn't. She was one of those people that we call constitutionally unable to stop. It didn't matter. And her pain management doctor eventually put her on methadone and she died.
Yeah, that's interesting enough. I saw a pain clinic doctor right after I was abandoned from my doctors, and supposedly the best one in the industry in Arizona. And I rolled into his office in a wheelchair on oxygen. He had no idea what my health was. And he walked in, I looked up at him and he said, "What are you here for?" And I said, "I need help with my pain because my doctors can't prescribe my prescription anymore. And I need to know what I can do. And he said, you'll go into a detox today. You'll be detoxed off of all of your Oxycontin in a week. I'll put you on methadone and we'll put a spinal cord stimulator in your back. Yeah. I looked up at him and I said, that's not happening.
Yeah.
Not happening. We're trading one drug for another. That's not good. And I've already been down the spinal cord stimulator route. And there's absolutely no way you're putting a piece of device in my back and having more control over me. I need control of myself.
No way.
Yeah, you know what they do in Jersey when they arrest somebody for under the influence of heroin or whatever, they don't arrest them. They take them to one of the county hospitals and they put them on Suboxone. So yeah.
You know, also, if you get arrested and you're already on methadone, your methadone doesn't follow you into Ocean County Jail. I think it was, or maybe it was whatever county Atlantic City's in, it could have been. But a friend of mine who was just religious about getting his methadone treatment in Toms River and then driving almost an hour to where he worked, and he'd be there to open and be at work on time, and he just everything. And he got arrested on I don't know if it was an auto or something. I mean, it was something, you know, just a stop and we're taking you away. But he couldn't have his. So anyway, he was in jail almost 3 weeks from being on methadone for a few years. And then no methadone and nothing. And he really went through hell just doing that. So when he got back, I don't know if it's to get back on methadone, or if, I don't know if he had to have a dirty.
Yeah, he had to have a dirty urine.
But whatever happened was, he went and scored as usual, and it killed him because he hadn't.
Because his system, yeah.
So, and he had a 5-year-old daughter. We worked together every day.
Oh, that happens often.
We hear that all the time in recovery. You know, people relapse. You know, they relapse after so many years and they die.
Mm-hmm.
That's why
can't do it.
Brian's law. You know, there's examples of it working. I'm hoping that speeds it up because then it gets to where it needs to be to people that are in institutional care. And I'm convinced that if I have just a good basic understanding of Ryan's law in the states that it's in. I mean, now that it's in Maryland, it's like right here. So I'm more making sure I'm going to know about that. But what you know about the endocannabinoid system in that, it won't be hard to be the smartest person in any room arguing for institutional care. And I like fooling people into thinking I'm smarter than I am. I'm very good at it, you know, and other people, no, he's not. He's not that smart. But I have good field vision. Maybe
are that smart.
Yeah, well, maybe it's just, you know, field vision. I see things not differently all the time, but I do. And sometimes it's just too simple. And to back that up, I would say we all know when the shuttle blew off on blast off. That was a 73 seconds up and all that. And they had big meetings to try to find out why. And they had this big round table meeting somewhere. I mean, a big round table, and everybody did their, and there was that one, you know, scientist that was just like kind of out there and saw things differently. And he's the one that had an O-ring, part of an O-ring. And I don't know if at the beginning he started talking and he put it into a glass of ice water, and then he was talking and something, and he brought it out and snapped it. And that was it. I mean, all this other stuff I didn't understand, and he saw it there. Yeah, I feel like I'm a little more like him. You know, sometimes I can actually get to the other side without going through the middle. Wow, that sounds okay.
Yeah, I think when you can share your personal experience is when you have the floor, because your knowledge is so important and valuable to someone else that's in exactly the same situation that you might have found yourself in. Yeah. That's what people want to hear. We can do all the book smarts and all that stuff always.
I'm the
But
guy.
it's the lived experience that really helps move this forward.
And those are the people that are passionate about this plant. The ones who have either lived it or had a family member live it. That's the
Yeah.
crowd that needs to come together.
Well, it's a family member that I seem to never forget, because I was that family member, a person with a wife, family member, and it was critical. And basically, the order of events was there was 19 things, not just little things that Cheryl tried that didn't work, and you always needed something new. You got to have hope. There's something left, because when there's nothing left, what you were doing with pain, you knew there was something else you could do. But if you feel that pain and it's not going away and there's no hope and there's nothing left, shit happens, you know. So my life changed when I said, you know, Dr. Kevorkian, his biggest patient, most prominent affliction was multiple sclerosis. You know, a lot of people don't know that, but each one, you know, and it's like, holy shit. And then one neighbor in Lakewood made the news, and the picture of her is she's in a hospital bed holding herself up a little bit, and you know, Cheryl going way beyond that. And when I said, man, I'm glad, I you know, read that to her, I said, I'm glad you wouldn't think of something like that. Without changing her expression, she said, you're assuming or don't presume, I forget which, you know, don't think I wouldn't anything. In other words, like, yeah, it had crossed her mind. So that's when I, you know, lost my inhibitions about doing things I would never otherwise do. But it's when people talk about how many patients, say home grow, with here it's a matter of affordability a lot. And even if a person couldn't grow didn't know how, there's a lot of good people. Growers is some of the best people in the world. It has been my experience. I don't mean if they're in a cutthroat business type of grow, but just the people who love the plant, you know. Mm-hmm. And I'm of the mind that many would be taken care of like that out of the goodness of somebody's heart to stop by. Here, send me a picture. Would you have any questions? I'll set you up and whatever. But beyond that, it's the family. What about the family? I mean, if there's kids in the family, dad's the rock. They can't hear dad crying because he didn't get medicine because he had to get food. Oh, now the kids are, and you know.
Yeah.
Oh, don't get me started. I'm talking to myself there. I'm not talking to you. Don't get me started.
No, Jim, you're exactly right about hope. When the doctors and the CDC told me I had at the most 5 years to live, and that I should accept this is the life you have and just be okay with it. And it's going to get worse every day. Where is the hope in that message? And that was part of what turned me around as well. It's like, I can't live with that. I'm not going to live with that. You know, I had to come home and tell my mom that. I was her caregiver. She had Alzheimer's and I was her caregiver at the time, believe it or not.
Whoa.
And it's like, how am I supposed to come home and tell my mom that?
Yeah.
You know, that's just not fair. And I didn't go into medicine to give those kind of messages. You know, I went into medicine to help people. And that's, you know, even if that may be what you think is the case, I don't know that that's it. I'm 11 years in now.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, learning that I could be in charge for myself and do something about it was the greatest gift I gave myself.
Yeah. Patients can, you know, that can represent themselves are the best that there is. And of course with Cheryl, there's brain lesions that kind of slow down. You don't want to use a lot of compound sentences when you're communicating. And so a lot I would be like the voice and all. But there was one instance that proved it more than anything was going to speak about this when Montel was going to be there, Drug Policy Alliance, or it might even been the Linda Smith Institute, I forget at the time. That a press conference, and there was Montel and three others, including me, speaking. And you know, he has the story everybody came for. And 2 days before that, I forget what I was looking for. I found a little mini tape that I'd recorded One time when I had to get Cheryl changed and it was going to hurt, I had to roll her on her left side and it was going to hurt and it had to be done. And that would get me in such a, I have to do it, but I don't want to, but it would mess with me, So when I said something in anger to nobody in particular, why am I the one that has to hear you in pain? I'm not the one that needs to hear this. And she said, well, why don't you record it? Because I had a recorder so I wouldn't forget shit, a little mini cassette. It was, and I did. And I guess that was 2 years later, and she had died 9 months before that. And I went and I told the story, and then I concluded with, that I've been told in New Jersey by the Department of Health, it says right in there that is their policy that there's other prescription drugs that work as good or better than marijuana, and in any case that marijuana is said to have a positive effect on. There's already something that exists, and I reiterated that. And then I explained a lightning version about the pain in the recorder as I was reaching into my pocket. And I said, now here, in her own words, I think Cheryl can dispute that. And I turned it out and pressed the button, and it was, like a wounded animal. You can hear it. And then me saying, quick as I can. Oh, sorry, quick as I can, quick as I can. Oh, man, there was projectile crying from a cameraman in News 12. Holy shit, man. But my point is, patients can do that for themselves when the situation arises, which is why I'm so livid that we have a bill that can't get a hearing for over 5 years now. The Senate president can block it. But the point is this is where patients get to show up, those who could, and those can be helped who can't afford to or need something. It would really help turn things around, and it's just not happening here. So it's yet in all that, if somehow a short version of your story was mixed in other words, okay, what I'm angling for here is a really good version from you. Should we ever have a hearing? Sometimes there's somebody would say, oh, I could just read that with my time or something, I don't know. I mean, I'm just looking for ways to, I can't help it. It's ingrained. When I hear something that affects me, it's how can I present that here in New Jersey? I'm always on the job. I can't help it. I need help.
So anytime you want anything from me, I'm here to support and to help and to bring this message forward, because I believe we have a responsibility for those of us that have learned how to use cannabis and what it's done for us. I believe we have a responsibility. I used to get frustrated with my original pulmonologist and say, let's just go into the room next door and tell that individual what I'm accomplishing with my lungs with cannabis. Oh no, we can't do that. But they have a right to know. They have a right to know that there is something that could give them a better quality of life.
Yep.
It doesn't fix it. It doesn't cure it, but it gives you a better quality of life.
It does.
Who doesn't want that?
Mm-hmm.
And isn't that why you went into medical training to begin with? Is to give a better quality of life to whomever you're treating?
It puts
For people to go from existing to living.
Yep.
And that's a huge, huge thing. Basic.
Patients have a right to know. Wow. Patients do have a right to know. And
they need to know.
Yeah, but right away, I imagine Lefty's like, all right, here he goes. They have a right to know. Yeah, they do. They do have a right to know. And
power to the patients.
And the fact that we don't even know why we don't have medical provisions. We had them in the Senate, and it got passed by a man named Senator Scutari, who made sure that everything happened. And on the floor of the Senate, 2216 got taken out in an assembly compromise / ultimatum, and left us with, if you want it passed, do that. And and he did that, but we never found out why they were taken out, because that was in the assembly. He does know, but we weren't like, why? Now he's Senate president, and there's a 4 adult, 4 immature plant limit per patient. In New Jersey, a bill that's really modest, and it's not allowed to be heard by the same guy that got it passed for 6 plants. And all I keep saying is patients have a right to know, even if they're not going to be there, they have a right to hear what's in that bill, and they have a right to know why it's not getting heard. Yet I have advocates telling me you don't want to beat up on him too much because we need him. And I'm like, well, we've needed him for 5 years. At what point do we kind of move in a different direction? Because I'm lowballing at 2,000 registered patients have died in that time, and but without stories really being told where legislators can hear it from patients, and it's going to happen, and we'll look back and say at the end it will be patients and their stories, but sometimes the ones that have the best stories can't physically attend, and
Exactly.
So,
but if we made a line of everybody who has been helped by this plant, we could probably drop that line around the world for people to go in and tell their story and move on, because there are that many people that have been affected.
The line listening would be far shorter.
Well, yeah. I mean, going all the way back to the Indian and Chinese culture, BC, what they knew then and how it affected their bodies. I mean, this isn't anything new.
Well, we got a good why are we still waiting video that Lefty arranged and got why are we still waiting for home grow, or why are we still waiting for the bill to be heard as well. And it got quite a good conglomerate of patient testimonies, and took advantage of a podcast that he has at the State House. And there was a tent where, because it was at the time before we would be smoking, out in the open like we are now as patients at the podcast. And he got a lot at that one there. But the thing is getting somebody to sit and watch it. I mean, it's opening the doors to a conversation. And, people are kind of hard to catch like that. But I don't know. I'm just really waiting to step back from it all and help other people with good ideas when I can. Because I'm tired of being a go-to guy for medical cannabis home growing, and I'm not mad at adults in particular, but I can't convince enough people that if you're an adult and you want home grow, put a lot of effort into getting patients the bill heard, because everything that would be heard in that bill, 3/4 of it's going to apply when home grow for adults is heard in a bill. It's already going to be out there. It'll be easier to move for adults. I'm believing this is the.
My name is Dana Ulrich. My daughter Lorelai suffers from intractable epilepsy. 14 pills a day and a medical device still leaves her with hundreds of seizures a day.
My name is Luke Schultz. I've had pain and disability my entire adult life.
My name is Teresa Nightingale. I'm 25 years old. I am also a stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer survivor.
It's heartbreaking.
Oh, God, yeah.
My name is Beth McCormack. I'm an epileptic. I've had part of my brain removed. I've tried all of these different medications. Why can't I try something like this?
We live in Pennsylvania, and our son has Dravet syndrome.
My name is Tony Alshire. Everything on with me, medical cannabis would help, if not cure. I'm a patient. I'm not a criminal.
My name is Tracy. I suffer from EDS level 3 severe fibromyalgia, avascular necrosis of both long bones of both legs.
This is Scott. He is 29 years old and has Dravet syndrome.
This is my brother Ryan, and he suffers from intractable epilepsy.
My name is Derek Rosenzweig. My father suffers from reflex sympathetic dystrophy.
My son, Corporal Dane Friedman, died by suicide. The VA had him on 21 pills per day, most of which had harmful side effects of suicidal tendencies.
It's been 2 years since we started educating people about medical cannabis in Pennsylvania. We've presented plenty of education opportunities.
I have a sister with intractable epilepsy, and I don't know why she has to wait for medical cannabis anymore.
I think my sister shouldn't wait for medical cannabis. It's taken forever and ever.
This is
I
Ryan.
love
He has
it.
intractable epilepsy. He's had 2 brain surgeries and failed 13 seizure medications.
This is my brother Manuel. He has epilepsy.
Hey, my name is Mike Whiter. I'm a 39-year-old United States Marine Corps combat veteran with PTSD. Medical marijuana could help me and countless other veterans with PTSD, but instead, the VA gives us pills and lets us kill ourselves. What are we still waiting for?
Why is she still waiting?
I'm still waiting.
I'm still waiting.
Why am I still waiting?
We're still waiting.
Why are we still waiting?
Why I'm still waiting.
We are still waiting.
Why are we still waiting?
Why is she still waiting?
And he's still waiting. We are still waiting.
I'm still waiting.
I'm still waiting.
We're still waiting for our brother to talk to us.
I'm still waiting to tell Jackson's recovery story.
Why is he still waiting for her medicine? I'm still waiting.
Why are we still waiting?
That is powerful.
Yep. Now
That is
these,
very powerful.
imagine just a few of them being in a committee hearing and sitting there waiting their turn. The kids, the patients, just waiting their turn to go up and say anything. And that's being stopped for 5 years by one person. Well, 2 different people, one at a time, but yeah.
I don't know how anybody can watch anyone suffer, but when I just think about kids and any one kid that is having 500 seizures a day, how can any one human being think that that's appropriate to leave them there when we know that cannabis can actually improve that for a lot of families? It's like, that's just inhumane to me that we are doing that.
Still waiting.
And it's like, if it's out of sight, out of mind, I don't know it exists. This is why these stories become so important and why they need to be shared.
That's why it's our job to bring it into sight, even if it's like a 10-foot blow-up rat. It's a cute-looking rat, but we named him Ratari because we have a Senate President, Scootari. And there are advocates that do not like it. Why are you doing this? He's going to be mad. He's going to be angry, and we need him. And all I can say is it's been 5 years we've needed him, and people are dying, you know. But the thing is, it needs to be done differently because what we're doing isn't working. And is there a better idea? I'll try that first.
Debbie, are you familiar with Kerry Cardi from 420 Media?
Yeah, Debbie, you do know Carrie. You know Carrie from the network.
She would be somebody that, would be great to connect with, because doing a documentary with the people like we just saw, and I think that would speak volumes. People love that kind of stuff. They're all into the reality TV. I think that might be a way to help.
There's a lot of ways to help. Unfortunately, a lot of these ways have been tried already, but it's got to be I guess it's got to be repetition,
Yeah,
Repetition,
absolutely.
I got a decent documentary if you want to see Cheryl Miller, The Case for Medical Marijuana Necessity, or whatever. Got a nice 28-minute documentary, and of course, mostly it's Pete and pictures and me. But at the end, I think the ending was great because she seldom has a chance to be able to speak for herself, and a couple of quick questions. And one was, you're frustrated? How do you feel? She says she's very frustrated. And then I don't know if it was the answer to a question or not about the legislators. And she said, it's very frustrating. They're such liars. And it was boom. It was it. It was like Edith Bunker saying, oh, they're lying. It was that. And just that in itself, could be isolated and put in for a posthumous weighing in on this from decades ago. And not much has changed in New Jersey. I mean, actually, we've gone full circle back to a lot of stuff sucks, but I do have hope, Actually, it's more like a bucket list at this point. It started out as hope 30 years ago. Now the hope has actually become the bucket list, to get this on track. Where if I ask myself, can I, it's never going to be perfect. There's always going to need to be adjustments. I get that. I mean, forever. But at some point, when I can say that I will not be able to accelerate the pace of any of this happening, I can help keep it going. But I will feel so free when I feel like it won't matter if I said another word. I want to feel that. I want to, the end of my own line, I mean, before I die. And I do have hope, though. I mean, I really do, especially oddly enough, recently, and I suppose it probably is an after, we have a new governor, one that is going to be in the last 12 years, the first person who would really, you would assume, would want to help. I mean, and statements that she has made before. Our first woman governor, I count that an extra plus, extra credit for that, for it even having.
Christy Whitman, whether,
yeah,
she's so female.
Okay, yeah, but I when I think of her, I think of that picture of Cheryl in her hospital bed in front of the State House after doing an illegal test with troopers there to see if this mystery liquid that I say is a cannabis tincture helps it disappear, in front of TV cameras, and the sign being held by Dana Beal behind her said, Governor Whitman, pick on someone your own size, which was cool with a hospital bed setting outside the State House, So no, she did not have anything nice to say about it. And we did have to track Governor Whitman down at a town hall meeting she had at Tonsor High School, where I went to high school, where she brought her whole gubernatorial cabinet, and they all had their own classroom, and you could talk to any cabinet person you want. What a great idea, by the way. That was awesome. So we went in and to the health department thing there and did our thing, but then got to at the end when she was on the stage in the auditorium, and I was like the second person in one of two microphones in the aisles. I was like camped out. I don't know how I turned around. Somebody else was there. Shit, I'm second. And Cheryl was sitting close enough that that I could point to her. And so, yeah, I got up and I said, I wanted to introduce you to Cheryl Miller. And I thought Governor Whitman would have, I caught you. And I was going to have my fun, because she knew who I was, but Cheryl Miller and Jim Miller, maybe the names. And she was, oh. And it wasn't adversarial. So I quick pivoted, field vision, and said, first, we want to thank you for the Pharmaceutical for Aged and Disabled program, PAAD, being solvent enough that with only, I think it was a $2 copay at the time, she could have all her medicines that we otherwise could not afford. And she was starting to feel like, oh, this is good. You know, this is a way to start a town hall here, you know? And then I switched to, and I said, and we're so grateful because one of the medicines that she takes, her best medicine, the absolute one that keeps it together, it costs $2,200 per month. And that medicine is called Marinol, otherwise known as synthetic marijuana. Do you know who Cheryl is now, Governor? Oh, I was awesome, because she was like standing on a stool, one foot on the ground, the other one up on a rung. And I had her physically leaning in, and then all she did was she put this pursed lip thing and went like that. And then I walked one side of her and down the other. And one of her people came and said, hey, we've got to let somebody else. And I said, yeah, I'll leave when I'm ready, but you know that, right? And I'm, you know, having a good time. And the biggest compliment I ever got was from a reporter afterwards. He said, you know, I've never seen anybody dance right at the edge like you did there. You know, I mean, I went right up and I had a good sense of getting my full 3 minutes in, you know. And so anyway, yeah, she was a woman, but you know,
Not our kind of woman.
yeah.
Not our kind.
Also, other people, I think if they could have seen how much, not fun it was, but when it could be, because showing up and you're obviously physically having differences than other people are, and to her extent, you could show up anywhere, and the legislators would come right to you, like, you know, they walk over if you don't have a sign saying marijuana. So I can't tell, from Bill Bradley doing his beach walk, you know, and it's, hey, would you like to talk to the senator? It'd be nice, you know, to go into a rally with John Corzine and Governor Greavy down by a lighthouse, you know, and Cape May, wherever. And we go on down there, same thing. Hey, would you like to talk to the governor? Yeah. So they brought us over under a shade tree in a nice setting and brought over the governor and his wife and his daughter. And we talked. And the thing is, it went real good, but that left me with a picture of the 12-year-old daughter, Mara, it's an Irish name or something anyway. The picture, he's on one side, and he's like, we're having a good conversation at that point. His wife's over there, and the daughter is like this, just like a Madonna pose, looking over at Cheryl, you know. And so anyway, it was only the child in the group that got it, you know. And I did have an appointment with him, but 6 days before the appointment, I'm looking at him on TV coming out and saying I'm a gay American, and because he was getting in trouble and he had to come clean about, you know. And I knew it right then. I was watching it with Cheryl. I go, I'm not having that meeting next week. it's not happening. But anyway, I'm only saying this to bolster what you already know, that it is the patients, you know. So if you can help a patient get somewhere when they need to, like an organization, like we have eventually when there is going to be a committee meeting, it's going to be all hands on deck. You know, will it take a GoFundMe for separate patients, or what? I mean, what will it take, and to have it be ready, because that's it. It's going to happen. I don't mean to hijack the show like that. I'm still glowing with what I heard about your story, that I know I'm going to be finding a way to say it myself, you know, because it's one of a kind in a way. I mean, I've heard a lot of stories. I mean, we all have. And it's one of a kind, but it's exactly what people have been hearing, an amalgam of all these other snippets of all these other stories packed into one that has a flow, you know. I mean, it's a story.
Everybody's story is important. There's no one that's more powerful than the other in my mind.
But
Anyone-
some will be more effective than others in trying to change a legislator's mind. I hear what you're saying. You know, because the smallest of stories sometimes takes the greatest of efforts for a patient. And when you combine that, you know.
No, but we've tried a lot of different ways, you know, and we get blocked. You know, during the Obama administration, you know, a lot of cannabis patients, a lot of cannabis families came forward. We did a whole postcard campaign. And Debbie, you probably remember that. And we sent, and the postcards always had a picture of, you know, a child with Dravet syndrome. You know, one of them was my cousin. And it still went nowhere, you know. It was there. Did we accomplish some kind of awareness? Yes, we did. But I'm not sure with who. I'm really not sure. I think, you know, it's like anything else. It's like, unless it affects someone personally, they don't get it, you know, until it does. You know, I would think I'll give you my husband, for instance. You know, he's a surgeon. You know what? He's got that mentality, and because of me, he gets affected personally. So that kind of turned him around, you know, somewhat. You know, he wasn't like some of us that, you know, started recreationally smoking weed when we were 10 years old, you know, or what have you, you know. But it's because of me. And that's it, you know, and I've kind of taken, you know, my whole family along with me for the ride. But if it doesn't affect you, you just don't care. And that is the temperament in this country.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. It really is.
And it's that way with anything.
You know, and I've been a nurse for 45 years, and I've worked in some of the most atrocious, high-profile areas that I saw things and did things that I can't even repeat.
Well, you know what you were saying.
I can't share that. You know, I can't share that because, yes, it affected me personally, but it affected me in a different way. You know, so I mean, there's just so much to put together. You know, I think Jim, what you proposed to Debbie about doing maybe a documentary, or maybe it was you that said it was. But you know, yeah, it's all good. It's all good. It's the more the merrier. You know that saying.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what we have to keep doing. You know.
Well, you know, I'll say though, I think
promoting each other.
You really hit it on the head that, you know, we have to do something, but unless it affects them, they're not going to really feel it. Right. That's why I have to spin off to be the bad cop, to offer somebody something unpleasant that we can make go away, like me, you know. So, well, I mean, it's okay. Picketing a congressman's house,
being annoying, civil disobedience.
Yeah, right.
I'll be right back.
To do all that, and but that again, it gets pushed back from. Okay, I'm even doing the advocates, the air quotes thing. That's I could do it with middle fingers, probably. I suppose that'd be the quote inside a quote. By the way, you know what I mean?
What's the quote again?
Well,
I missed that because I was watching your hands.
Well, that was when I'm calling somebody advocates that push back on don't upset the apple cart that is delivering apples.
Yeah, fuck that already. You know what? You know what? I want to know, and I'm going to say the same thing that other people have been saying. Where are the young people? You know, I go to like all these protests. Where's the young people? You know, we were out there. We were out there. You know, I'm old. I don't fucking belong out there. I can get hurt, you know, but we were out there when we were younger, you know, we were the ones that we made it happen.
Yeah. Well, you weren't really out there when you were involved at a level high above me. And you know, I mean,
I understand that, but it's the same concept, right?
No, I showed up for the head count because it was fun and girls were there. I mean, I knew I was doing good. but you helped organize it and make it work, So like you've already paid your dues many times over. I was, I guess, one of those younger, but I didn't have anything cannabis related like that. This to stand up for. This is the lowest hanging fruit. It's a T-ball. Take a swing. If you never swung a bat before, you might hit it just by showing up, especially if you have a reason or anybody in your family. And what people need to see is, one, the righteous anger of a family member. Two, a family member that can't talk because they'll cry.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what the words are. They need to see that. I can give them one.
Well, I think that talking about where's the younger crowd, I think that we have to be on college campuses. I think this is something we've been working really hard to do, is to get our message out on college campuses, because let's get real, over 50% of adult Americans live with at least one chronic illness today, if not more. Worldwide, 1 in 3. And that was before pandemic of COVID. I think that number is much higher than that today. So if we don't do something about our healthcare system and where we're headed, where are we going to be next year? All of us sitting here are using cannabis for something. And so,
and I didn't start there. That's not where I started.
Me either. But it's the thing that brought you and I to where we are.
It is. I would have never met you.
We would have never met. I probably wouldn't be here. Pretty good chance I would not be here based on where I was at the time and not having any support or anybody helping me. I don't think I would still be alive. Do I know what my life would have looked like if I had used cannabis from the very beginning of me developing CRUPS or me getting arthritis in my knee? I don't know what that would look like, but I can tell you it would be very different than what it was for 3 decades, because I've seen now what cannabinoids can do. It's given me this.
The information that you have is exactly what helps. And when I got married in 1984, Cheryl already had MS. She was in a wheelchair, but healthy as could be in a wheelchair, And she didn't smoke ever. She just hadn't. And it was like, well, gee, Jim, you smoke a lot of cannabis. When you get married to somebody that doesn't smoke, I'm like, more for me. I don't have to even split the last one. And I was being me then. But the truth is, if I'd known what I found out all on my own when I was running out of things, if I knew then, she would have had her first salad dressing then. And maybe I wouldn't have had a fight with the National MS Society at the level I did. But now, when the National MS Society is saying, in effect or even directly, that cannabis use in this method can slow down the progression. It just slow down the progression. Now, if you have relapsing remitting, that might mean a whole lot more than when you got primary progressive or chronic progressive, because that's just downhill. All you can do is kind of control the angle, and you do reach a plateau of sorts, but it doesn't really get much better. I mean, it does if you are able to do other things that help the body. So I wish I'd known, that would have been 7 years sooner. And then for the people that don't know, or the information's being kept, whoa, my God, informational bill being kept, the information kept from senators who their opinion doesn't count until they hear that. And they hear both pro and con, and they get to ask questions if they're on the committee, or have somebody ask questions to the people, for whichever way you're pro or con against it. But when you don't let that information be heard, there's other people that might have nothing to do with this now. And when they hear what's going on from an informational hearing with real information, it might save somebody else from having to wish they'd known sooner, and as always, it's like, I guess I lived that, because when I found out that it worked, I was shocked. And I told Cheryl, listen, we can do this quiet or we can do it loud. And she, what do you mean? And I said, well, we can tell everybody about it, but that's going to kind of put a back on a target on our 1991 backs, you know, the dark ages. And it was like, don't you wish we'd known sooner? And I'm like, well, yeah. And then as close as I can remember, it said we shouldn't wish that somebody had done something for us we're not willing to do for somebody else. And, you know, there's really nothing truer than that. That's like you could live a life just based on that. And it would be a good life. So it was like all about information at that point. It was doing whatever it took. And if it took civil disobedience to get national press there, yeah. You know, and if it laying down in a congressman's office doorway on a sleeping bag, you want to walk all over patients, start with me, Bob Barr, you know, stuff like that. And I always hoped it would catch on more too. And I knew what it felt like, I thought, because 6 months after Cheryl got arrested for taking part of a butt I gave her in a congressman's doorway in 1998, 6 months later, I got a call from somebody and said, I just wanted to call and tell you there's a woman named Renee Emery, and she just smoked a joint in Congressman Bill McCollum's office, who wrote the resolution that said marijuana is a dangerous and addictive drug and should never be used by any state as medicine, whatever, trying to slow down the rush for states to enact laws. In 1998, they wanted to nip that in the bud. And so to be able to just simply go there and take a piece of a bud and eat it and get arrested, is national news. But it did more than that. It gave Cheryl a sense of purpose, because when we were leaving the motel, a nice motel, the next morning, we didn't have a nice one at first, and then with such a success, we got put up at a good one. And they called Mr. Miller when we were checking out and going out. We have some extra copies of the USA Today here. You're on page, you and Cheryl are on page 6. Would you like them? And Cheryl's like, what the hell? Because we hadn't really heard any of that media. She hadn't. And then that was pretty cool. And then the first person when we got outside was a woman who was smartly dressed for going to work in an office of some sort somewhere. It was that purposeful. She's going somewhere. She stopped in her tracks, looked at Cheryl and walked like right over and said, I saw you on TV last night. Good for you. Go get him. And so that waking up to that, just for living in front of people, I couldn't give her much, but, I was able to give her that. And that sits well with me these days, And that's why I do feel it incumbent upon me then to beat that drum when we do get a hearing scheduled. Yeah, I mean, not just help them get there, help them understand the hearing's going to be like, be ready, be comfortable with what they have to say, Now, I'm going to take part in that. So, Johnny, what are you laughing? Because I might not live that long.
No, I wasn't laughing at what you were saying. No, I'm sorry.
The other thing is, though, and what we have to continue to do, and I know that probably the 7 of us that are here right now have been doing, is we just have to keep putting it out there, because it's up to us. Yep. It really is. We're the ones that have to provide. We not only have to provide good guidance, we have to provide sober guidance so that we're taken seriously. And that's a biggie with me. And I was taught that a long time ago when I was in Students for Democratic Society. And that's what got us that's what kept some of us from being arrested, like me, for instance. Because what I did was I had things to worry about. I had things that were going to affect me personally if anything happened to me. So I had to be really, really good with my practice, with my civil disobedience, etc.
You had to be calculated.
I had 2 little kids, that I was it. So yeah, so it's that sober kind of guidance too, because it's still a stigma. Cannabis is still a stigma. Cannabis smoking is still stigmatized. It's there's always the off color comments about well, everybody's out there getting high. I catch myself saying that sometimes too, because that's what we did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, the joke the joke's always when the Coalition for Medical Marijuana 2 decades ago would table somewhere, and it would be, hey, you got any samples? And that would piss me off. Like, no, this is not funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't make jokes. Yeah. And if I had samples, I wouldn't give them to you. It would be for a patient. I'd be breaking the law even then. And, and I didn't mean to be rude, but I learned not to jump on people after about an hour because that was going on. Then it finally went full circle. And the last time I was at Morristown Day in Morristown, somebody actually said, you got any samples? I go, hey, I got one. I'll burn with you right now. Oh no. And it was like a payback for all that. You got any samples? And I heard it, and I did have one. I wasn't going to smoke it right there because, you weren't allowed still. But yeah, anyway, we have come that far. And as much as I do complain, and I know everybody has a right when it's not going smoothly, but I think it helps us all when we do take a look when we're all able to realize how far we have come, Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people now that don't have to go through what we did, and they don't have as much of a correction to make that still needs to be made. There's systems in place for people to help. They don't have to invent the wheel, And I'm proud to sit around with people like all of us just to figure out where we all can go, and that we're all would help get it here. So,
and we still have a lot of work to do, but I think the path has been started to be paved.
Yeah.
Debbie, thank you so much for your time tonight. This was an amazing podcast. And Wayne, hit it, Wayne. Nope, wrong one. Nope.
This concludes our podcast.
There it is.
There it is.
He's a patient that recently passed away, Debbie.
Well, thank you guys for having me here. I love having
thanks, Debbie.
Thank you for coming back.
Yeah.
And I'm going to
anytime.
Yes, thank you. It was great to see you. I'll be in touch because I know I have to fill out that form just with 420.
Well, you need to fill out. If everybody should share their story here, because everyone has a story. And when we share it, and we show that we're normal people, we're not over consuming, and that we're not stoned out of our minds, that's the image we're trying to break. And that's what everybody thinks. And all of us had a very legible, welcoming conversation tonight that anyone that joined in could actually say, oh yeah, I can see that this is really something that is important.
Debbie, do you have a website or a way people can contact you?
Yeah, you can go to effectivecannabis.com, or you can go to effectivenewsletter.com and sign up for the newsletter. It's free for everyone. I believe education should be free. I think that the more we can educate, the better. And we would love to have everybody that has a testimonial would love to share their story. We would love to feature them in an upcoming issue.
Debbie's got a good newsletter too. It's really, really good.
It really
I
is.
really enjoy it.
Yeah, I do too.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you, CMNJ. Thank you, UFCW. Thank you, Arlo Glass, Oprah Machine, and sativacross.org, where you can donate $1 or $1 million.
Be donating.
Be donating. Our list begins with Cheryl, Sabina, Diane, Gracie, Cindy Mae, Marie, Jack, Joan, Randy, Polly, Bill, Chad, Jeremy, Colette, Matt, Troy, Russ, Roger, Jay, Ella, Hattie, Jackie, Anthony, Jake, Armando, Felicia, Lynn, Dan, Sean, Joyce, Lori, Frank, Brian, Flo, Carl, Thorne, Frank, Lorraine, Terry, Charlotte, Cher, Jaybird, Michael, Marley, Colette, Brendan, Red, Rico, Lou, Becky, Lawanda, Chip, Paul, Lisa, Marcus, Gary, Julia, Wayne, Waxy, Joe Marie, Paul, and Jeff.
This concludes our podcast.
Okay, good night, everybody. Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
Thanks
Debbie.
for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Debbie.
anytime,
Have a great
anytime.
night.
Thanks. You
They
guys
shall
have a
grow not
nice
old as we
evening
that
as
are
well.
left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning we will remember them. Thank